Hello, I'm at Leomani Tower in Essex to bring you this week's surprising stories. Unable to speak or move for 3 years. Now, new research is giving hope to patients like Christine.
When we first saw that this patient was actually consciously aware, I was absolutely gobsmacked.
Meet Dave and the family. On the menu, roadkill and sugar-free cakes. And looking back to 1984, how a small Essex town found itself at the heart of the miners' dispute. They're all on tonight's Inside Out. Now, our first story tonight is very moving. It's about Christine Simpson from Harlow. She can't move or even speak. She's what's called locked in and has been for 3 years. At first, doctors didn't even think she could see or hear, but she can. And now pioneering research in Cambridge is finding new ways of communicating with patients wrongly diagnosed as being in a permanent vegetative state. Colleen Harris investigates.
Vegetative state, locked in, the undead. There are a whole range of different terms used to describe the thousands of people in this country who are apparently switched off to the world around them. People like Christine Simpson from Harlow.
Christine has been like this for the past 3 years after suffering a stroke. Her husband was led to believe she was lost in a coma and was expected to die. But all isn't what it seems, because actually Christine can understand everything that I'm saying.
And what's more, there could be hundreds more people like her.
When we first met, it was we were going to a pop concert in Clacton, and we went on an old double-decker bus. She got very long red hair, and it was always very striking, so she stood out, straight away. We used to go out for meals, and normal things that, couples do, I suppose, and on holidays on occasion. She was a very busy mother, having twins, and that always kept her busy.
But one evening 3 years ago, their lives changed dramatically after Christine complained of feeling unwell.
I left her on the bed and then went to call the doctor, but before we arrived I had to call an ambulance because it was quite obvious to me that she was having a stroke. And she actually had the stroke in my arms while I was holding her.
What did doctors tell you then?
Well, they told me that she would survive a few weeks and she would die. It's a very difficult thing to absorb that, within a few hours and then a few days, that the life that you had was gone completely without any warning at all.
Colin was told Christine had suffered a brainstem stroke, was virtually in a coma and couldn't understand anything going on around her. But he was convinced the doctors were wrong.
After 2 or 3 days, in the early hours of the morning, she began to open her eyes, and we asked her if she could see us, would she move her eyes, which she did. And that's how we began to realise that she was both conscious again and able to communicate with us. When she sounds like she's labouring a little bit, so we check her blood oxygen saturation. I'll look at you. And if it is a little bit low, which it is, I have to suction this off of the chest. A little bit of a cough.
Ever since Christine's stroke, Colin has spent every day looking after her.
Nice big breast for me. Okay, sweetheart.
He's even had basic training in nursing. The one thing that keeps him going is his belief that if he gives Christine as much one-to-one stimulation as possible, her condition will gradually improve.
Look down to say hello then. Good girl. Are you comfortable at the moment? Look down if you are. Yeah.
Cambridge neuroscientist Dr. Adrian Owen was one of the first in the country to suspect that some people diagnosed as being in a vegetative state could be aware of their surroundings.
I scanned a patient from Addenbrooke's Hospital who was apparently vegetative, and we showed her pictures of her family and friends. and we saw activation in an area of the brain that we know responds to faces. And that was the first indication that we had that some of these patients might have some residual abilities that weren't obvious from the outside. When we first saw that this patient was actually consciously aware, I was absolutely gobsmacked.
What he discovered was that while some patients described as vegetative were unable to express themselves through movement, their brain patterns showed awareness of their surroundings. And he knew that from using an MRI scanner like this one, which can reveal the inner workings of the brain.
Okay, if you want to have a seat on the table there. Alright, so just stay nice and still.
What we've done here is we've acquired a structural image of Colleen's brain. Here you can see a view from the side. You can see her nose there, and that's the front of her brain. Here's a view from the back. That's the left side of her brain and the right side of her brain. And here's a view from above, and again you can see both the left and right sides. What we can do is we can combine those three images into one three-dimensional image that you can see here. This is a reconstructed three-dimensional image of Colleen's head and her brain.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the functional scanning now, okay?
When you hear the word tennis, I want you to imagine that you're standing on a tennis court and you're playing a vigorous game of tennis, moving your forehand and backhand to return as many balls as you can. And you'll do that for about 30 seconds. We'll go backwards and forwards between relaxing and playing tennis. Is that clear?
Yeah, that's clear.
Great. Tennis. Yeah, she's imagining playing tennis. Rest.
Wow, so this is my brain as I've never seen it before.
It is, yeah.
So how does asking questions about tennis help patients in a vegetative state?
If we ask you to imagine playing tennis at a particular point during the scan, and we see that area of the brain light up that we know is involved in imagining playing tennis, then we can be sure that you understood what we asked you to do, you had memory for what we wanted you to do, and you could turn those memories and that understanding into an action. And that must mean that you're consciously aware of what's going on around you. You've seen your brain. Now look at this brain. Now this is a patient who, from the outside, was entirely vegetative, or at least appeared to be vegetative. No responses, no speech. She wouldn't blink if you asked her to blink. But when we asked her to imagine playing tennis, she produced activation in the premotor cortex that was indistinguishable from your own activation.
Wow.
It shows us that brain imaging can provide something in addition to clinical or bedside evaluation. So in this case, it told us that a patient that looked vegetative clinically was in fact entirely aware. It's important to stress that this will be a minority of patients. It doesn't mean that all vegetative patients are aware, but it does mean that we're now able to detect those that are.
I was also told to imagine walking and navigating.
Walk.
And the reason for that is it causes a completely different area of the brain to light up. It's hoped this might lead to the next big breakthrough: communication with patients believed to have been in a vegetative state.
If you were to imagine playing tennis for a yes and imagine walking around your house for a no, that would be a fairly simple way of answering simple yes and no responses, and that's what we're trying to develop right now.
Do you want to give Josie a stroke? That's it, you are, look. Yeah, I know you can feel her. Christine does have a lot of potential. People have made not complete but reasonable recoveries from her condition. What these people need above all is stimulation and time.
The tennis technique is very recent and needs to be perfected. But the work by the Cambridge team has already helped Colin get better care for his wife. Today she's returning to Addenbrooke's for a further brain scan.
Put your head back now, sweetheart. There we are. The team at Cambridge have proved beyond doubt that these people have far more awareness than they're generally given credit for by the medical community. These people need to be able to communicate their wishes, their understandings and their feelings. She realises that people are trying to help her, and it's well worth the effort.